Hello and welcome to your reading lesson for this week. Oh, by the way, this is Miss Bornhorst, in case you can't tell by my voice. I hope that you guys are all doing wonderful and that you've been enjoying these lessons that we've been creating for you and that you've been learning a lot. This week, we are going to continue to focus on different reading standards. Our standard this week has to deal with cause and effect, and we've talked about this a little bit during school, but now we are going to dive in and practice identifying cause and effect relationships through text and through images. So again, before we get started though, let me just remind you of some of our online lesson norms, some things that you should make sure that you're following so that you can get the most out of this learning. The first one is that you focus. Remember to watch and listen to help you learn as much as possible. So this means that if you're in an area that you're going to get easily distracted, probably a good idea for you to move somewhere where you can hear and where you can stay focused and you're not tempted to watch what other people are doing around you. Step 2 says rewind the video if you're confused or you need something repeated. So throughout this video, I'll be going over what cause and effect relationships are. I'll be reading the text out loud multiple times. However, if Ms. Bornhorst goes too fast or you miss something, you can rewind the video and listen to it again. Or if you just want to hear my beautiful voice again, you can rewind and hear it all day long. Step 3 says record your learning on your paper. So in just a second, we'll get our materials set up so that you can take notes and have your learning recorded so that you can send it to your teacher. And step 4 is that part where you're sending to your teacher. You're reflecting on your learning in the comment section at the end of the video. So in the videos underneath where this video will be posted, you'll put your name. You'll have your response with complete sentences and evidence to support your response. And I'll go over that again when I go over your exit ticket at the end of the lesson. So without further ado, let's take a look at the materials we'll need today. As always, you'll need a pencil and some paper. And then your text is cloudy with a chance of cats and dogs. And this text can be found in the district packet that was passed out. I also emailed it and sent your parents a message in the Remind app. So you have multiple ways to access that text. If you don't have any of those, don't worry. The text is also in this presentation. So if you have it, grab it. If you don't worry. I will make sure that you are able to see it on the slides throughout this lesson today. All right, once you have your materials, let's take a look again at what some of our symbols we're going to see today mean. So if you see this pause symbol here, that means that you're going to need to pause the video, and most likely you'll have to write something. So usually this pause and this pencil will be together because you'll pause the video and then you'll write something on your recording sheet. If you see this little Mr. Brain here, that means you're going to have to stop and think about something. So I really want you, when I ask you a question, I want you to think about the question that I'm asking you and come up with a response in your head. And then finally, you'll see this comment set button at the end, and that's where it'll remind you to post your thinking, to post your exit ticket in the comment section at the end of this video. All right, so let's get our paper set up. So grab your piece of paper. Again, it doesn't have to be a notebook paper, just any piece of paper that you can write on. I want you to go ahead and put your first and last name at the top so that I know and that your other teachers know whose work they're looking at. Make sure you have a section for your do now. Here is the chart that we will be completing today. So make sure you draw this cause and effect chart and then that you have a space for the exit ticket at the bottom. So at this time, I want you to pause this video, complete your note catcher, and then hit play when you are finished creating your note catcher for today. All right, now that you have your note catcher set up, I want us to go ahead and get started with our do now. Our do now will kind of get us ready for our lesson today. So if you'll take a look, it says, why might a tree fall? Come up with as many reasons as possible. So as you can see in this picture, we have a tree that has fallen. I want you on your paper to record all the reasons, as many as you can, for why might a tree fall? What could cause a tree to fall? When you're finished, hit play and I'll meet you and we'll discuss. All right. So I'm kind of curious about reasons that you came up with. Maybe the tree was old and rotted and it fell. Maybe someone cut it down. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons for why a tree could fall, right? Well, we're going to discuss this is actually a cause and effect relationship, right? So what happened, the effect, is that the tree fell. Well, the cause, why did it fall? You guys came up with the causes. Like I said, maybe the tree was old. Maybe someone cut it down. There's a lot of different possible causes. This is an example of a cause and effect relationship. It's what happened and why it happened. Okay, and we're going to go into a little bit more depth on that throughout this lesson, but I just wanted to get us thinking about um, possible cause and effect relationships during your do now. So moving into our target today, your goal after you watch this video is that you will be able to identify cause and effect relationships to help you understand how and why, oops, it should say why, I'm so sorry, how and why events happen, right? So we just kind of talked about that tree. We figured out what happened and we figured out why it happened. Okay, so again, we're going to be identifying these cause and effect relationships within a text. In order to get us started, though, we need to make sure we understand what cause and effect relationships are. So follow along with me as I read. This will kind of give us a brief overview of cause and effect relationships. It says, a heavy storm hits and a large tree falls. The storm is the cause, or the reason the tree falls. The fallen tree is the effect, or what happens as a result of the storm. So remember our tree. Did anyone come up with a reason that the tree could fall as a storm? If so, you had similar thinking to our authors here. It says the connection between these two events is an example of a cause and effect relationship. Understanding cause and effect can help you see how events and ideas are related. Writers often use words such as because, if then, since, so, therefore, and as a result to signal and explain a cause and effect relationship. So we'll talk about some of these. These are signal words that can help us figure out if there is a cause and effect relationship. But let me just break this down a little bit for you. In other words, the effect, which we're going to always look at in green throughout our lesson, is what happened. The cause, which we're going to look at as blue, is why it happened, right? So in our scenario here with our tree, what happened is the tree fell. That's the effect. Why it happened? Well, there was a storm. That was the cause, right? So always ask yourself what happened and why. Those words will be key and those phrases will be key for you to help you figure out cause and effect relationships. So let's practice now. Says identify the cause and effect in each scenario. Number 1, Demi had to open her umbrella because it started to rain on her way to school. I want you to think, what was the cause? What was the effect? In other words, what happened and why? Let's check your work, right? So if we move here, we see Demi had to open her umbrella. So what did Demi have to do? She opened her umbrella. That's the effect. It's what she did. Because it started to rain on her way to school. Well, why did she open her umbrella? Because it started to rain. That was the cause. Cause is why, effect is what. Did you get that right? If you did, give yourselves 2 claps and a boom shakalaka. I heard you from here. All right, let's try another one. It says, as a result of COVID-19, students are learning from home this quarter. Okay, again, I want you to ask yourself, what is the effect? What happened? It says, as a result of COVID-19, students are learning from home this quarter. The effect, what happened? All right, and then think, why? Why did that happen? That's the cause. Let's check your thinking. All right, so we said the effect, the green, is that students are learning from home. Yes, that is what happened. That is what is going on. The effect, why? Why are they learning from home? Well, COVID-19 has us all kept at home, right? Okay, If you got that one correct, give yourselves 2 claps and a Superman. All right, so now that we kind of have a basic understanding of cause and effect, let's take a look at some of those clue words that can help us figure out cause and effect relationships. It says these are words that often signal cause-effect relationships in writing. So say them with me: because, if, then, since, so, therefore, as a result. Okay, so a lot of times, not always, but typically if you see these words, it could mean that there's a cause and effect relationship. So for example, if we go back to our COVID-19 example, we see these keywords here: as a result, right? That signals that there's going to be a cause and effect, like something is going to happen and there's going to be a reason for why it happened. Okay, so let's take a look at this picture here and let's see if we can identify the cause and effect relationship in this comic. It says, Henry got a balloon at the party. Henry blew up the balloon. The balloon popped because Henry blew it up too much. Okay, so I want you to think, what happened and why did it happen? What happened and why did it happen? Thinking? Okay, well, when I look at this, I see that Henry, he's getting a balloon, okay? Henry, he blew up the balloon, okay? The balloon popped. Ooh, okay, so that's telling me what happened. What happened is the balloon popped. So if it's what happened, that's called the effect. Well, now I ask myself, why did that happen? Why did the balloon pop? Well, if I keep reading, it says Henry blew it up too much. Well, that sounds like my cause. It popped because he blew it up too much, right? So you should have identified the effect as the balloon popped and the cause as Henry blew it up too much. Right now, I want us to step back and I want us to think, what clue words might signal that there's this cause and effect relationship? Well, if we go look back at our list here, we've got because, if then, since, so, therefore, and as a result. Do you see any of those words? Ah, if you look at this last comic, I bet you will found one of those clue words. Our clue word that they had that to signal that cause-effect relationship was because, right? Again, asking yourself what happened and why. At this time, I want you to think. You're going to use this same comic. You see we have this cat here and this balloon. It says using the same comic, create a cause and effect relationship using the cat and the balloon. So now come up with something that's going to happen and why using our cat and balloon and record it on your note catcher now. When you're finished, hit play. Now that you've had a chance to record your cause and effect relationship, I want you to stand up and get moving. You know the drill. You should be professionals at these. These should be getting easier for you. If you want to increase the number instead of doing 10, do 20. Go for it. You've got jumping jacks, squats, and lunges. When you're done, hit play and we will keep going. Okay, now that you have gotten some energy out and we've had a chance to look at some cause and effect relationships in pictures in a comic, now we're going to focus on our text today. So our text today is called Cloudy with a Chance of Cats and Dogs by Nicole Scheffler. Okay, based on the title and the illustration, what do you think this text will be about? I wonder. It's kind of making me curious because it's cloudy, so I know it's maybe something to do with weather, but with a chance of cats and dogs? I don't understand. What does that even mean? Are they talking about the idiom it's raining cats and dogs? Are they talking about actual cats and dogs appearing? I don't know. Wonder what you thought. Well, before we find out what this text is about, let's take a look at the vocabulary that you'll need to enjoy today, or that you'll need to know in order to enjoy our story today. All right, our vocabulary today is water vapor. Now, you may remember this from science. Water vapor, they're little droplets of water in the air, right? So you can't necessarily see those water droplets, but they are in the air. And we are going to be reading about that water vapor today. our first time we read, you know that we always just read to enjoy. So I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy our text today. Again, it's called Cloudy with a Chance of Cats and Dogs. Follow along with me, please. It says, you may have heard the saying, it's raining cats and dogs out there. But what's really going on up in the sky? Read on to find out. Rain comes from clouds. But where do the clouds come from? First, it's important to understand that all air contains water. This invisible water is called water vapor. When warm air rises, it cools down. Cool air can't hold as much water vapor as warm air. So the vapor grabs a ride on any tiny particles in the dust in the air. The vapor forms water droplets around the bits of dust. A cloud is formed when billions of these little water droplets come together. Inside a cloud, the water droplets move around very quickly. When they move, they may bump into each other. As a result, they may stick together. If they stick together, then they start to get bigger. When they get bigger, they get heavier. Sometimes they get too heavy for the cloud to hold them. Then they fall to the ground as rain. If it's cold outside, then they fall as snow. Much of this rain and snow falls all the way back down to the ground. Then the whole process starts all over again. Okay, so then we have a little diagram down here that kind of models what our text said up here. It says step 1, warm air rises. Step 2, water vapor turns into droplets. Step 3, droplets form clouds. Step 4, droplets get heavy and fall. Right, so now that we've read it for the first time, our second read is when we're going to be listening for these things that happen as a result of these causes. So you'll notice we've got a cause here. It says warm air rises. Billions of droplets come together. The droplets stick together and get heavier. So this is our why. We're going to figure out what happened. So it says why? Warm air rises. Well, what happens because warm air rises, right? So all of these, we're going to figure out what happened. But then you'll notice that the second one, they gave us what happened. We have to figure out why it happened. Okay? So be listening for these things today as we read the second time. Okay? So for our second read, again, follow along, listening for those cause-effect relationships. It says, you may have heard the saying, it's raining cats and dogs out there. But what's really going on up in the sky? Read on to find out. Rain comes from clouds. But where do the clouds come from? First, it's important to understand that all air contains water. This invisible water is called water vapor. When warm air rises, it cools down. Cool air can't hold as much water vapor as warm air, so the vapor grabs a ride on tiny pieces of dust in the air. The vapor forms water droplets around the bits of dust. A cloud is formed when billions of these water droplets come together. Inside a cloud, the water droplets move around very quickly. When they move, they may bump into each other. As a result, they may stick together. If they stick together, then they start to get bigger. When they get bigger, they get heavier. Sometimes they get too heavy for the cloud to hold them. Then they fall to the ground as rain. If it's cold outside, then they fall as snow. Much of this rain and snow falls all the way back down to the ground. Then the whole process starts over again. Our diagram, step 1 says warm air rises. Step 2, water vapor turns into droplets. Step 3, droplets form clouds. Step 4, droplets get heavy and fall. All right, so you should have been listening for these causes. Maybe you heard them talk about warm air rising, billions of droplets coming together, when water vapor attaches to dust, and droplets that stick together and get heavier, right? Well, now what we're going to do for our third read is we're going to try to complete the chart. I'm going to do this first one for you. Now, you'll notice that our first cause says warm air rises. So I'm going to read again. As I read, I want you to listen for when I talk about when warm air rises, because that's something that's going on. We have to figure out what happens when warm air rises, right? So warm air rises, then what happens? When you hear it, I want you to snap twice, okay? So reading again says, you may have heard the saying, it's raining cats and dogs out there. But what's really going on up in the sky? Read on to find out. Rain comes from clouds. But where do the clouds come from? First, it's important to understand that all air contains water. This invisible water is called water vapor. When warm air rises, it cools down. Cool air can't hold as much water vapor as warm air. So the vapor grabs a ride on tiny pieces of dust in the air. The vapor forms water droplets around the bits of dust. A cloud is formed when billions of these water droplets come together. Inside a cloud, the water droplets move around very quickly. When they move, they may bump into each other. As a result, they may stick together. If they stick together, then they start to get bigger. When they get bigger, they get heavier. Sometimes they get too heavy for the cloud to hold them. Then they fall to the ground as rain. If it's cold outside, then they fall as snow. Much of this rain and snow falls all the way back down to the ground. Then the whole process starts over again. Step 1. Warm air rises. Step 2. Water vapor turns into the droplets. Step 3. Droplets form clouds. Step 4. Droplets get heavy and fall. Okay, so let's take a look again at our chart here. So you'll notice that we have our first cause says warm air rises. So this is why something's happening, right? Why it happened. Okay, so I'm going to put that up here above so that when you are working, you can remember that this is why it happened, right? And we're going to put that in blue. Then this other side is what happened because of that event. Okay, so this is what happened. We'll put this in green. Okay, so we're going to have to go back to our text here. Let me put this, here we go. That way we know that these are different. Okay, so we're going to have to go back to our text. It says warm air rises. Well, when I look in my text, I'm looking for, well, what happens when warm air rises? Okay, well, if I go up to my text, I notice right here is where it talks about warm air rising. It says when warm air rises, now I'm asking myself, what happens? What happens when warm air rises? It says it cools down. So I know that when the warm air rises, the air does what? It cools down. So on my chart, what I would put in that section right there is I would say the air cools down because that's what happened when it rises. Okay? Now, your job is going to be to complete the remaining boxes. Now, on this one right here, this is what happened. It said the water vapor attaches itself to dust to form droplets. You have to figure out why. Why does the water vapor attach itself to dust to form droplets? That's what you'll put here, and then you'll figure out the what happened, the effects for these bottom two boxes as well. So what I would like for you to do right now is to complete this chart. So if you need to, go back, listen to the text again, or go back and read the text again. You'll pause the video, complete the chart based on what you've learned, and then hit play. Now that you have completed the charts, it is now your job to snap a picture and send it to your homeroom teacher. They would love to see your work and give you credit for the work and help you with anything that you might need help with. So go ahead, pause the video, take a picture, and send it to your teacher. And before we move on to your exit ticket, I want to know what signal words helped you identify cause-effect relationships. So I want you to go back to the text and see how many signal words you can find in the text that might signal cause-effect relationships and jot them down on your paper. Alrighty, for your exit ticket today, you will record this on the bottom of your note catcher, and then in the comment section underneath this video when you are finished watching. Your exit ticket today says, what happens inside a cloud that causes rain or snow to fall? Use signal words to explain the cause-effect relationship. Okay, so I want you to go back to the text and I want you to think, what happens inside a cloud that causes rain or snow to fall? Now it says that you need to use some signal words. So I'm going to take these signal words and I'm going to put them on that slide because you are going to need to use some of these words in your writing. Okay, so I'm going to leave these words right here for you to use as you're writing. Now, you don't need to use all of them, okay? But you do need to use at least one in your explanation. Cool beans? All right, so let me read it one more time and then pause the video and you can record your answer on your note catcher. It says, what happens inside a cloud that causes rain or snow to fall? Use signal words to explain the cause-effect relationship. Pause this video, record your response. Now that you have recorded your response, it's time to post your comments. So remember that you are going to type your exit ticket response in the comment section underneath this video. Remember to include your name and use complete sentences and evidence to support your response. And so you've got this information, you have your answer from the text. Make sure that you are supporting it, that you're telling us where you got that information from. I can't wait to read your comments. I look forward to reading those and seeing the learning that you have gained this week during this reading lesson. So thank you so much for learning with me, and we will see you next time. Have a great week.